Can a showdown be averted in Gambia? Leaders of neighbouring countries fly in to try to convince the president to hand over power. Yahya Jammeh doesn't recognise the recent election result. Will he be given a safe haven if he agrees to leave? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. The walls seem to be closing in on Gambian President Yahya Jammeh. His term ends next Wednesday and regional powers are threatening to remove him by force if he does not step down. Jammeh insists the election he lost last month to Adama Barrow was rigged. Critics say he's holding on to power to keep his presidential immunity and avoid facing trial at the International Criminal Court. ECOWAS leaders are back in the Gambian capital, Banjul, after visiting last month. The president of Nigeria and other leaders from the Economic Community of West African states are trying to persuade Jammeh to accept the election result. Nigeria is considering protecting Jammeh from the ICC if he agrees to resign next week. Well, Jammeh appeared distrustful of Gambia's neighbours when he spoke to reporters on Tuesday.
Our review and investigations have revealed an unprecedented level of foreign interference in our elections and internal affairs, and also a sustained smear campaign, propaganda, and misinformation. No foreigner can love this country and hold its highest interest to heart more than myself and the majority of Gambian people. So I will also be taking all possible steps within the Constitution and my conscience to do my part to resolve this sad impasse.
Let's bring in our guests now. In Dakar, in Senegal, we have Salieu Taal. He's chairman of the Gambian civil society initiative #Gambia has decided. He also recently fled the country after being warned of impending arrest. In Oxford, we have Sophie Gallop, who's a doctoral candidate at the University of Birmingham's Law School. And between 2013 and 14, she was a law lecturer at the University of the Gambia. And in Bamako, in Mali, we have Adama Gaye, former Director of Information at the ECOWAS Regional Bloc. Great to see you all. Thank you very much for being here on Inside Story. Salieu, if I could start with you. We have regional leaders in Gambia on Friday trying to persuade Jammeh to step aside. Nigeria offering him asylum in return for immunity from prosecution. Is this situation acceptable to you?
As a Gambian, our concern is we just want ex-President Jammeh to accept the will and mandate of the will of the Gambian people. And any step that ensures that Jammeh leaves the country without causing any more damage to our people, we welcome this.
Does he need to leave the country, or what do you think of Adama Barrow's offer today for direct talks, for him to be honoured as a former head of state, again, not facing prosecution if he just stays aside? Barrow is saying that he doesn't have to leave the country.
Well, I cannot speak and do not speak for Adama Barrow. I think over 60% of the electorate did not vote for Jammeh. And he's making every effort to ensure that the will of the people is not respected or heard. I think it is in the interest of the Gambian people for Jammeh to leave the country, with all due respect. I think I cannot speak for any victims. I cannot speak for any victims who may have the rights or otherwise. I'm not in a position to speak about it. I think what is more important for Gambians is to ensure that come on the 19th of November, the legitimate president of Gambia is inaugurated and Jammeh is not in the picture anymore. I believe his presence in the country can be cause for instability.
OK. Adama Gaye, how hopeful are you that these regional talks will actually yield some results on Friday?
Look, I think, of course, Mr. Yahya Jammeh is a very unpredictable person. But at least since the advent of the crisis, ECOWAS, I think, has done the right thing they've touched the right button, they've threatened him, but they are now cajoling him by offering him now a carrot instead of a stick. If Mr. Jammeh has a little bit sense of wisdom, I think he will cling to this opportunity offered him by ECOWAS, because other option may not exist. For instance, I've read in the media that the Kingdom of Morocco wanted to offer him asylum, but I know for sure, because I've got the information, that this is not on the table. So he has the option to take this opportunity, but negotiate his exit strategy. He may be right to say that I don't trust West African leaders, because he knows in the past there has been an asylum offered by Nigeria to a former dictator, the former president of Liberia, Charles Taylor. But when he went to Nigeria, Mr. Taylor, in Calabar, I think, he was taken away from the country, from his asylum status, and handed over to the criminal court in The Hague. This may pursue Mr. Jammeh specifically if his victims, his many victims, come up after his departure and show that he has done so much damage that any agreement can't cover him. So the second step for him is, one, to take over the offer by the West African leaders, which is an opportunity for him, but secondly, is to find a safe haven, and that he may likely can only get it in places like Arabic countries, like Qatar, where the former president of Mauritania, Ould Taya, is hiding, or one of those countries where the former dictator of Tunisia, Ben Ali, is hiding. I think that's his best bet, but he needs not play with time and miss the opportunity that ECOWAS is offering him. Otherwise, the only option off the table will be the military solution. Do
you think that there is an offer on the table from those countries that you mentioned, such as Qatar, to take Jammeh?
Of course, these are things that needs to be negotiated, but he needs to show goodwill first. But I suspect Mr. Jammeh, despite his bravado, is already negotiating underground. I heard from security sources that he was recently in Guinea-Conakry, and even people told me that the former governor of Lagos State, Mr. Bola Tinubu, was the hitman, the contact person between Mr. Jammeh, Alpha Condé, president of Guinea-Conakry, and the president of Nigeria. Also, once he agrees that he is ready and open to a diplomatic solution that will take him out of the country, there is possibility that these countries can collectively talk to any of the Arabic countries where Mr. Jammeh will feel comfortable and get that accepted, as long as Jammeh shows the goodwill in the first place. But so far, he's showing to be strong-headed, to be somehow even suicidal. And that is the big problem that we are facing with this very shady character.
Sophie, is this assurance of immunity from prosecution the only way to ensure that Jammeh does step down?
I can't say it's the only way. I think that it's, in theory, a sensible option, but it does present a number of difficulties. On the one hand, if it does ensure a peaceful transition of power to Adama Barrow, then it should be welcomed, as Salieu Taal was saying earlier. The problem really is that it sets a very unfortunate precedent, and it may give the wrong indication to other dictators in this position. I think one of the other really big issues with this is what happened with Charles Taylor. It will obviously be something that Jammeh will be thinking about. He does not want to be given asylum for 2 years and then extradited back to face charges for the crimes he has committed during his dictatorship in the Gambia in 2 years' time. So there are a number of issues with this proposed solution.
Okay. Salieu, of course, the reason that we're focusing so much on this immunity from prosecution is because Jammeh is alleged to have committed very many serious crimes during his 22 years in power against the Gambian people. Why is it that people now suddenly lost their fear and decided they were going to speak out, or they are speaking out, as indeed you are now?
The analogy I'll give to you is that I think we have lived in a climate of fear and reprisal. We have been like in a coma for 22 years. And for a very, very long time, people did not feel that they have any way of taking on, asserting their rights without being imprisoned or without disappearing or without being killed. And for the first time, Gambians came in their numbers and used the ballot box to vote out Jammeh. And that step alone demystified Jammeh. When that happened, there was mass jubilation. People voted Jammeh out. 60% of the Gambians voted Jammeh out. And when people tasted this freedom that we didn't know for so long, people decided that we've woken up from our coma. Now we're not going to sleep again. There's no way we're going to allow ourselves to go back and allow ourselves to be subjected to 22 years of indignity and lack of respect as Gambians. And people... Go ahead.
Give us an idea of your personal story, because, of course, you've had to flee Gambia and are now living in Senegal.
Temporarily, and I'll be going back very, very soon. Basically, a group of friends of mine of different backgrounds, men and women, mainly professionals and businessmen, who were very, very actively involved in canvassing support for people to actually participate and exercise their civic rights to vote. We're very happy and jubilant that for the first time in life, we think that our children have a future in Gambia with the advent of change, only to hear President Jammeh renege from his previous statement, where he categorically accepted the results. Now he said he's going to challenge the results, and not only that, purportedly annulled the results on television. We thought, look, this is not something that is acceptable. I think this is the utmost lack of respect for us as Gambians, and we're not going to accept this as Gambians. So we came together as a group and started a mass movement around the hashtag Jammeh has decided, because it's a very simple message. 60% of Gambians came together and voted against Jammeh, and Jammeh has to accept that. So for that, we started with a very, very active campaign on social media, and not only that, we are campaigning on the ground. We are printing T-shirts on the ground. We are erecting billboards on the ground. We are mobilizing youth on the ground. We are talking to university students, different sectors of society, and ensuring that people understand that the reason why Jammeh is in power is the people, and the people who have decided it's over, and that it has to be over. And after having done that, we started getting harassed by the intelligence agencies. They started calling us at strange hours of the night. Then also they started damaging our billboards. They started damaging our billboards. We actually have them on video with military guys in uniform, uprooting our billboards, which we paid for and have the right to install. It is our right as Gambia. We didn't post any informative messages. We just said Gambia has decided. Gambia has decided for peace. Gambia has decided for unity. Only for that purpose, they're using their might and their army to try to silence us, and we refuse to be silenced. And it went further. Myself and Rafik Diab, and also a very famous blogger named Nyangda, another person, were targeted for arrest on the 31st of December. In fact, they actually came and stayed at my house. Luckily, I had left, and I was able to arrange my exit out of Gambia together with my friend, and then fled to Senegal. And after I fled to Senegal, people around me were also harassed, and they beat my house again. And it is very, very clear they want to shut us down. And they have also been arresting Gambians for just wearing a T-shirt.
Okay. Adama, listening there to Salieu's testament of what his experience was, we can hear that there's a very strong civil movement. 60% of the country voted against Jammeh, and yet the people who are speaking out are still being harassed. What support does Jammeh still have in Gambia?
Look, what happened in the Gambia should not come as a surprise to anybody who has been watching the evolution of democracy all over the world. In 1989, the East Germans, they voted with their legs and they broke the Berlin Wall. East European countries, they brought down dictators across that part of Europe. If you go to Asia, you have many countries. The Color Revolution in South Korea, in the Philippines, and in many countries, they call for democratization. And Mr. Jammeh was wrong in believing that he could continue bullying the people of the Gambia. The people were not going to take it off all the time. I met Jammeh in 1999 or 2000. He is not a stupid person, he's smart. But I think he overestimated his capacity to rule through an iron fist that country.
Sure, but just last week, Adama, just to jump in there, because last week, I'm just trying to get an idea, the army chief threw his weight behind him just last week, so he does still have the support, at least of the top levels of the military.
Of course, he still has support. He built those supports over the years. But never make a mistake. The Gaddafis, the Saddam Hussein, they have people who pledge support to them. But at the end of the day, the same way you see people fleeing the country because they are civil rights movement crusaders, or because they are politicians fearing for their lives, the same thing will happen with those military. They realize that the region is sidelining Mr. Jammeh. The international community is against Mr. Jammeh. We need to hear more of the international community from the African Union, from the Security Council of the United Nations, because Yahya Jammeh now seems to be an injured animal. He's an injured beast. He's trying to find an exit way. And even those people who are making pledge are not with him necessarily. They are themselves also aware that the days of Jammeh are almost over.
Okay.
And Mr. Jammeh, people should ease his exit strategy.
Okay,
so that
but it is said, isn't it, Adama, that an injured beast is at its most dangerous. Sophie, there are reports that Jammeh is hiring mercenaries. He's going around the region, hiring ex-fighters from other conflicts. I mean, we don't know if there's any truth to those, but what are you hearing?
I have not heard anything concrete so far. I know, as you were saying, that the army has, or top levels of the army have shown support for Jammeh, but his relationship with the army is quite an interesting one. Obviously, he came to power in '94 in a military coup, and obviously had the support of the military and the army at that point. But since then, there has been an attempted, or at least an alleged attempted coup on his presidency, and that was purportedly headed by members of the army. So whilst on the one hand he has previously had very strong support from the army, on the other hand that relationship has been tested in more recent years. So whether he will continue to have the support of the army as the pressure grows will, I think, something we will need to see.
Adama, should ECOWAS use its military might if it comes to that?
Listen, if you need to look at history, it was in 1990, in August, in the Gambia precisely, during the first Iraq war, that ECOWAS stated its own program of military intervention, and it decided to intervene in Liberia. Now the big problem is, do they have the appetite to intervene? Because it's a very risky proposition. If you go into the Gambia, Mr. Jammeh somehow can be a crazy person, ready to die and kill so many people, and this region cannot afford to be in a quagmire. You have also in the southern part of Senegal, in Casamance, a rebellion that is still going on, that has not yet been fixed. You have Mr. Jammeh. Indeed, I was told by a security person from Guinea-Conakry that he went there. People said, I don't know if they are speculating whether he went to hide money, stash money there, or recruit military. But at the end of the day, in diplomacy, that is known, you need to maintain some level of military threat in order to make sure that diplomacy has a chance of succeeding. And I think that on the table, those who will be traveling on behalf of the ECOWAS, the President of Liberia, Mrs. Salieu Taal, who has shown strong leadership here, and also President Buhari, who has been very effective and tactful leader, and the other leaders of, let's say, the Ghana, Mr. Mahama, who has understood that he can show by example that he has left power and is not out of capacity of playing a role, and the President of Sierra Leone, Mr. Baikoroma, all of them, they should maintain that option on the table. I think already ECOWAS have a standby force. They have a committee of regional chief of staff of West Africa, and if they decide to intervene with the UN Security Council, which should play a role in this situation, I think Mr. Jammeh's chance to stand would be very, very slim.
Right, okay. Well, as Adama was just saying, ECOWAS has deployed its regional forces several times over the past 30 years. They were in Liberia from 1990 to 1998 to intervene during and after the civil war. ECOWAS says it disarmed rebels, negotiated ceasefires and paved the way for corruption-free elections. ECOWAS also sent troops to Sierra Leone following a military coup there in 1997 to help reinstate the internationally recognised government. And it still has forces in Guinea-Bissau. They were deployed after a military coup in 2012 and are expected to withdraw this year. Salieu, is this a good option, this military option from ECOWAS? Is it good to have that on the table, as Adama was saying? Are Gambians happy to have the possibility of a military intervention if it comes to that?
I believe that we have to have a carrot and stick approach. I think any external intervention must be as a matter of last resort. I think we must give diplomacy a chance. But I think knowing that the kind of person we're dealing with, and with respect, outgoing President Jammeh has not shown good faith in this relationship. He's always coming with different schemes and scenarios, and I don't think he's somebody that can be trusted. The Gambian people don't trust Mr. Jammeh. Mr. Jammeh came out on TV and about 2 days ago or so, and made a statement that has so many different interpretations. And I can assure you that without the possibility of the use of force, the problem in Gambia will not be resolved. The only thing that is keeping outgoing President Jammeh in power is his use of force and power. And obviously, if ECOWAS does not live to its obligation and duty to protect the Gambian people and leave the Gambians to the devices, I think the consequences will be much dire for the entire sub-region, because Gambian people will, if ECOWAS does not assist Gambian people will help ourselves. And if we help ourselves, the consequences will be much more serious. And at that stage, ECOWAS will have a much, much serious problem. So I think this is the stage for ECOWAS, for its own credibility. We have eminent people in the presence of Buhari and Sarah Johnson and ex-president of Ghana and Salieu, who have come and we left their very busy schedules. This is it's not very, very complicated, in my opinion. The problem is Jammeh. He has to accept he has lost the elections. Now, let him accept the will of the Gambian people. We don't want anybody to come and shed a life. Any life that is lost in the Gambia is entirely the fault of Yahya Jammeh.
Okay. Sophie, Adama Barrow has said that he is confident that he will be sworn in next week on the 19th of January. Is that confidence rightly placed?
It's very difficult to tell at this moment. I would think it's fair to say that Gambia is on a knife edge. As you said, ECOWAS has mobilised troops ready to intervene, and I completely agree with Salieu. These really, really should be a last resort. But as we were discussing earlier, an injured animal is the most dangerous, and if Jammeh is allowed to stay in power, after this significant threat to his dictatorship, he is likely to become much more repressive. He already uses torture, he already puts people in jail without any trial, people are forcibly disappeared, and the real danger is, if Jammeh is not removed, he will become worse after this threat to his dictatorship. So whilst I think it would be very, very difficult to predict what will happen over the next few days, I think there is a real danger that if there aren't contingency plans in place, if Jammeh won't leave peacefully, then Adama Barrow won't be able to go forward with the inauguration on the 19th, and Gambia will be left in a very, very vulnerable position.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. Thank you very much to all our guests for joining us here on Inside Story today. Salieu Taal, Sophie Gallop and Adama Gaye. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, bye for now.